This 2015 Road Glide was brought to us by Andreev to prepare for stunt riding. In stock, the touring does drifts and wheelie, but raise the front wheel gets too difficult, landings are hard, drifts are unstable, you cannot tilt the bike deep in turns. Therefore, the first step that we should do is to replace the suspensions, lengthen the fork and install 23 inches front wheel to raise a steering stem to do wheelies easier. Today is a test ride, and I get the bike for a second time for 5 minutes. This is after 5 minutes riding. You can imagine what I will be able to do in 10 minutes. There are 23-inch front wheel, Legend 4 cartridges, 14-inch Legend rear shocks. I can make sit-down wheelie. Earlier I could do stand-up wheelie only, now I can do sit-down wheelie. It says a lot. I start with the rear shocks. To replace them, you need to hang the swing guard. All holes and bolts should be cleaned off the thread lock. We choose Legend Revo ARC 14 inches monotubes that should be good with longer fork and big front wheel. The shock is mounted with washers on the outside and bushings on the inside with 54 Nm torque. With longer shocks, the exhaust can touch the rear axle nut. This should be taken into account. At the top, the bolts are longer than necessary, so we added the spacer on the outside that should not touch the shock mount in extreme positions. For touring, the reservoir are connected to shock with steel braided line. Fender and side mounts are already cut on this bike, so Legend mounts cannot be used. Zip ties is the simplest way to mount reservoirs. There are 2 zip ties around the reservoir to protect it against friction. I will adjust the shocks after installing the fork and new wheel. Removing the fork starts the front wheel. In this configuration, triple clamps can be loosened without removing a tank and cover. To lengthen the fork, it is necessary to make full rebuild. At first, you should unscrew bottom bolt and drain oil. After, unscrew the top cap to pull out the damper and spring. The seal is locked by retaining ring, and it should be knocked out with sharp blow. There is a cup at the bottom of the outer tube. Installation of 2-inch longer cartridge requires to change inner tube to longer one, which we ordered earlier. The coating of the bushings is worn, so I replace it with the new ones. All of the rubbing surfaces should be lubricated when assembling. The cup from the Legend kit must be fit the seat at the bottom of the outer tube. The bushing of the outer tube is installed by seal driver via washer. Then the bushing is in place, the sound is changed. Next step is to install the oil seal and retaining ring. Before installing the cartridge, it needs to set the preload according to weight load. In our case, it is one turn from the 0 point, which is set by Legend manufacturer. Rebound spring is used from the Legend kit. It is recommended to use new washers for bottom bolts. The cartridge is fixed with the bottom bolt on the thread lock to 40 Nm. The fork oil is poured according to the instruction. In our case, it is 385 ml. Fork should be pumped to move oil to the outer tube and remove air. The top cap is tightened to 34 Nm. Another fork leg is assembled in the same way. Unlike the stock damper rods, Legend cartridge is autonomous shock absorber, with sealed damper filled with oil and pressurized by nitrogen chamber. It has low-speed compression, which provides maximum braking efficiency without sacrificing comfort on bumps. The top cap has a valve for nitrogen injection. Fork installation is carried out in the reverse order. The inner tube should protrude half the height of the chamfer at the back. The triple clamps are tightened to 24 Nm. On a new 23 wheel I used the old hubs for 2 brake discs. Bolts should be cleaned out, otherwise the new thread lock will not work. During assembly, it's important to check the rotation direction of the wheel and brake rotors. There is a spacer between the bearings. Tightening the hub, the axle should be inserted to align spacer between bearings. Bolts are tightened according to a 2-triangle rule. The wheel should be balanced before installation. The weights are put in front of the heaviest point until the wheel is static in all positions. It is important to fix the weights on a degreased surface. The quality of the wheel is quite high. Such a big diameter with 2 brake discs took only 40 grams for balancing. Now the wheel can be installed. The axle nut is tightened to 100 Nm. The right fork is pressed to spacer and must be tightened to 29 Nm. Now is the time to adjust the rear shocks. Rebound damping has 8 clicks. I prefer 3 clicks from a fully closed position. The compression has 6 clicks. I prefer 3 clicks from a fully closed position. For drifting, it is better to make shocks stiffer. According to the instruction guide, a sag should be 1 inch, but I will set it to half an inch, because Andreev is heavier. This setup needs to change front brake lines. Watch detailed video on our YouTube channel. With new suspensions, it is much easier to make wheelies. You can tilt the bike deeper in turns, shocks don't jump, and provide constant grip while drifting, loading the rear wheel more stable. Subscribe if information was interesting and watch other Harley videos on our channel.